idea what was about to happen to me was going to happen.
Healer of my broken night, sees the dark but crafts it bright. Angels whisper through his sight, shifting shadows into white. She can pull the moon so near, wipes away my every fear. Time is slow where love is clear, no more space for pain to steer. In Attis we collide, no once upon, just endless tide. Breathing light where dreams reside, lost in whispers we can't hide. Her hands carve stars from empty skies, shapes of dawn as echoes rise. A flash of hope in weary eyes, the sea of time in her complies. Drops of gold and silver streams,
No idea what was about to happen to me, but it was going to happen. I lived an ordinary life. I was a banker. I had been a financial analyst. I sold my brokerage firm. And one day, I was out on a property that I had built, and I was using a chainsaw. And something happened that I couldn't refuse it happening. It just naturally happened. When a chainsaw kicked back and sliced my throat wide open. And as a result of that experience, I died. And where I went was I was one with God. He revealed his everything, crossed the light, went into the timelessness dimensions that the consciousness, the mindset, the energy of God is. And as I went through that light, I landed on the top of a mountain. And it was a beautiful day, blue sky, there was like grass all over the place. And the mountain, I would say, was up about 800 feet. And I didn't have any body. I had just this awareness, just this presence, just this consciousness of who I am. And I remember feeling a touch to the right side of me, kind of like where my left elbow would be. And I turned to the left and I moved towards the edge of the mountain. And there was this pathway, a windy pathway. And I just followed it. Now I wasn't walking, I just floated. I just floated along this pathway until I got to the ground, and I moved in a 1 o'clock direction. And as I moved in that 1 o'clock direction, it was like I was moving across a meadow. And as I was moving towards that 1 o'clock direction, all of a sudden in the distance, I saw this structure that started to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was like a big round structure, and it was all in, there was this 25 foot high fence around it. And I remember as I was walking towards that fence, the gate in the middle just opened. The left and right side just backtracked and opened, and I went through it. And as I went through that gate, I went towards this big round structure. And as I was walking towards the structure, the front door just opened. And as that front door opened, I went in it. There was no life in it at all. It was just like a living room straight ahead. I would estimate the time of day would be like the setting sun time of day, like later afternoon, 3 or 4 o'clock, something like that. But to my right were some stairs. And the stairs were connected to that oval outer structure, and I went up those stairs. Now again, I'm just floating at this time. And as I went up the stairs, I turned left down the hallway. The first room on the right, I looked into it, and there was these blue and green orbs that were moving back and forth, and I could see that they were moving in and out of what looked like a CD sleeve. And so a blue orb would come back, it would go into the back of the CD sleeve, and the new green orb would come out, and it would just move away, move, and that was happening constantly. And I've come to know that that room was called the Akashic Records, where all of the spirits and life forces emanated from. And so I went a little further down the hallway, and on the right hand side was another doorway, and I went in that doorway, and it just opened up as I got there. And when I went in it, it was just pure black, and it was completely dark. And I went in it, and I sensed but did not see that the door closed behind me. And all of a sudden, I felt this warmth. I felt this presence that just began to just envelop me. And all of a sudden, it as I'm looking straight ahead, I saw it started to communicate with me. And as it was starting to communicate with me, it was forming a 6-point violet hexagon. The first point was at 1 o'clock, then at 3 o'clock, then at 5 o'clock, then at 7 o'clock, then 9 o'clock, and then 11 o'clock. And out of each of those points came this violet energy. It was a little bit of a crackling sound, and it connected to make a hexagon shape. And then it telepathically began to communicate with me. And as it telepathically began to communicate with it, I was able to telepathically communicate with it back. And it first said to me that I am. And that then began to, within that hexagon, create this kind of like white noise, kind of like the white noise of a TV station that would go off at late at night in the 70s. And I was then impressed telepathically that that is the female element of I am. And then it took me into that white noise, with the male element leading, the consciousness leading. And as I was following it, all of a sudden I went through this window, and I was in a classroom environment. It kind of reminded me of my grade 12 chemistry homeroom classroom, except it was completely bare, except 2 desks in the middle and a teacher's desk up at the front. And the male element of the consciousness, those 6 hexagons, then told me it was going to morph into a more recognizable form, which it did, which was kind of like a fish-like body that had a big yin-yang head, a round head, small arms, and rather big ears. I remember that the ears were very, very large in proportion to its head. And out of that, it pulled its male helper, which is placed in one of the desks, and its female helper, which is placed in another desk. And where I was in the room was I was just like a fly on the back of the wall, just taking all of this in, seeing it all happen, understanding it all happen. And the male element, the male consciousness of Source or God, gave the name to the male angel, Lucifer, and the female angel, Lucy. Then it was at that time that I understood exactly what was going on and where I was at. But at this point in time, I was at the pre-planning stages of time or timelessness, the events that happened long before the Big Bang even began. And what the male consciousness of God did with its 2 little hands is it just lifted them up to its left and to its right. And at the minute that its fingers got to the top, this live screen went on for both Lucy and Lucifer to watch what was happening. And what they were watching was what they were going to be doing for God. It was at this point that I was revealed that God exists because he is creating himself. He's creating himself within his female womb. And so Lucy and Lucifer were watching exactly what it is that they were going to be doing on these videos that were going on. And when they were completed, got it confirmed with them that they knew exactly what was going to be happening, we all left that classroom. And as we left that classroom, we went out the back window, and it was Lucifer's turn to begin his work. And what Lucifer's work was to create the physical body of God within its female womb. And the point in time that this was actually happening was at the beginning of when the Big Bang is estimated to happen, which is like 13.7 billion years ago. And for 13.4 billion years, Lucifer, following God's instructions, created the physical body of God, where our universe, which was the first universe of the physical body of God, is only one of trillions of other cells or universes called parallel universes that make up the multiverse body. And so 3.2 million years ago, Lucifer's work was completed. He had absolutely created the physical body, conceived and gestated it to its exact size that it was to be when its birth occurred. When Lucifer was done, it was now Lucy's turn to begin her role in the creation of God's body. And so what Lucy's role was to create the personality and identity that this body would have. And so for 3.2 million years, Lucy developed the personality and identities of souls and spirits that it would bring in to all of these different parallel universes. And 12,000 years ago, in time as we know it, the completion of Lucy's work was done as well. So Lucifer had completed the physical body, which took 13.4 billion years. Lucy had completed the personality and identity of the perfected, soon-to-be birth fetus of God. 12,000 years ago, in our universe, in a society that Plato referred to as Atlantis. Now, at that point in time, this fetus, divine fetus of God that he was creating from his mind into his female womb was completed. And myself, Lucy and Lucifer and God literally went back into that classroom, literally went back in through the back window, and we were at the wrap party, the wrap party of wrapping everything else up. The job was completed. Lucifer and Lucy had completed their part. And again, I'm the fly on the back of the wall watching all of this happen. And I remember Lucy was just so excited. She couldn't sit still. And over this 13.7 billion year period, Lucy had not aged 1 second. In other words, she was still that 12 to 14-year-old girl. And Lucifer, he hadn't aged 1 second either. He was still this 16 to 17-year-old handsome young man. He had completed his role of constructing the physical element of every parallel universe of God's fetus. And I remember telepathically God communicating with Lucy. She was just so excited. The birth of this new fetus was going to take place. But Lucifer, who sat in the other desk, had his head down, his arm down, and telepathically, he said, this isn't fair. This isn't fair because he deserved to own the fetus. And it was at that moment that separation happened within God. And God could not birth itself with any darkness, with any separation, because that's not who or what God is. God is the purity of euphoria, love, and abundance that I didn't want to leave. And at that very moment, Lucifer had created an energetic element of separation, or a dark spot within God. And I remember watching what happened next. For 6,000 years, Lucifer and God bantered back and forth to create the entities, get the approval on the creation of those entities, who would be in a cosmic trial to determine who is the rightful owner of this fetus. Is it God or is it Lucifer? And so the earth had to be completely cleansed, which was the last ice age, and absolutely every element of Atlantis had to be destroyed, because there could not be any coin of Atlantis found, because it would mean that this cosmic trial would be a mistrial. And so the cosmic trial was agreed to be set up in the first universe only, which is our universe, which with a soon to be determined life force that was still not created at this time. In other words, this was 12,000 years ago, and the new creation of humanity began 6,000 years ago, literally in the Garden of Eden. And each side of the case in this cosmic trial, Lucifer being the prosecution, God being the defense, had to deliver its case through this formula of A equals VW. A stands for abundance, V stands for value, and W stands for worth. And so from the Garden of Eden, at the fall of when Eve ate that fruit from that tree, is when Lucifer's case began. And Lucifer's case went until December 31st, 2019. That was the end of the prosecution's case. And each case had to be delivered energetically through mankind, so that they could determine who the rightful owner of this fetus was. And humanity is the jury in this cosmic trial. And when 144,000 people before December 31st, 2031 have chosen to become the totality of everything that God is, that is when the defense of God wins the cosmic trial. Now, Lucifer, or the prosecution, had delivered its case of A equals VW this way. The value that Lucifer has created to determine abundance is something called a credit score. And the worth of Lucifer's case that he has created to determine abundance from his prosecution case is a net worth. 100% true and accurate that case has been successful, that our credit score leads to our net worth, which is abundance. If we have a poor credit score, we don't have a net worth. If we have the higher our credit score, the higher the net worth is. And so Lucifer's case was impacted by the system that he had set up. He had set up a monetary matrix following that abundance equals value of a credit score and worth of a net worth. He had set up a system, a monetary matrix, through something called central banks, governments, artificial intelligence, artificial entities, military, banking, legal systems. So that humanity has zero chance and is totally enslaved. And today, that enslavement is this very, very, very small group of monetary elitists that have created this huge gap between the rest of humanity that has enslaved us and enslaved us. And so that was Lucifer's case. God's case began on January 1, 2025. Again, God's case was through that same formula of the cosmic trial of A equals VW, except his value was not a credit score. It was something called a return on investment, an ROI. And his worth was not a net worth, but a self-worth. In other words, a enhanced return on investment creates our self-worth. And Lucifer's case was all about him winning. God's case is all about us becoming God, which is how God wins this case. And so the beginning of God's case, as I said, began on January 1, 2025. Specifically, it's the last two chapters of the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation, which says, in a new heaven and a new earth began to descend. And Revelation 21:5 says, and this is God speaking, behold, I'm making everything new. And that's God's case, making everything new through his value and worth. And the reason why I came back was to find that 144,000 that will become God and be the exact same energy and spirit that we, the 144,000, were in Atlantis 12,000 years ago. And so God's case is all about the resurrection of God. And when that 144K before December 31st, 2031 become God, that means that the case of abundance equals value and worth in timelessness is won by God. And what that means is God is the rightful owner of the divine fetus. And so when that happens, time as we know it will move into timelessness. The black holes that have been put in place to hold our dark energy of fear and chaos, which was Lucifer's case, within us and not filter out into the other purity of God, into the other parallel universe. The black holes will completely disappear. And so time, or our universe, moves into timelessness. So God's body that he has been gestating for 13.7 years in its womb can be born. That birth date is December 31st, 2082. And God's body is literally the body of Jesus. And where Jesus is birthed into is literally back into Eden, where it all began 6,000 years ago. And when Jesus opens his eyes in the Garden of Eden, it's you, it's everyone else in our bodily forms, in our perfected bodily forms. It is us in every other life force that we have had in this universe, and every other life force we have been in every universe. And we literally, in the soon-to-be birth body of Jesus, are the blood of God. And timelessness becomes eternity. And that's where we're at right now. This period of time that we are in right now, these next 7 years, are the most crucial 7 years ever, because this is what is going to determine if the body of God, which is Jesus in its womb, lives or dies. And it's up to you through your elixir of life, which is your inner mind, to determine if this is right for you or it's not right for you. And this video, and me narrating this video of my experience of being one with God, is meant for you to make that decision. And making that decision is very, very easy. It's something that you will know and you will feel is right for you. And right now, God is unlocking and unleashing the abundance of God that has never been seen before, the abundance of God that is going to make and break this monetary matrix that Lucifer has had in place for thousands of years. And it's going to be done by you. It's going to be done by you becoming monetarily free through God, which is why I was sent back. And all I want to say to all of you right now is this: enjoy the journey.